honor to welcome the Reverend Dr. Sandra Stevens-Perel, one of Plains ministers, to open us in prayer.
Well, thank you. Just to repeat and echo what our chair of council just said, thank you for being here. This is a very special day. It's a special day in the life of this community and of this church. So let us go to the Lord together in prayer. Almighty God, creator and sustainer, we gather today with hearts full of gratitude to you for this beautiful place of your creation. We are in awe of this quiet, majestic place on the inlet, the gentle movement of water, the vibrant colors of the sky, the sounds of nature, and even the touch of the gentle breeze that you provide. Such a space and peace are gifts only by the generosity of your love. And today we gather to honor the history of this building known as Oliver's Lodge. Thank you for life that has been lived and joy shared over many years in and through this special place. May those memories continue to inspire us even as we celebrate the present and look to what you hold for the future, new chapters of ministry here in this place. We pray your blessing on all who will handle the work of preparing the building contents for new and vibrant purposes. While it is the close of a chapter, it is the beginning of another chapter under your guidance and the seal of your almighty will. Continue to bless our going out and our coming in, remembering that the witness of the faithful goes on wherever the faithful are to be found. Now, O God, author and perfecter of our faith, we entrust ourselves and this space to you as we commit ourselves anew to your service, trusting your immense love and goodness. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Emma Fogler. I'm very happy to be here today with my mother, Robin Fogler. She's sitting down there. I'd like to thank Paul Gardner for allowing us to join you this afternoon to celebrate Oliver's Lodge, and also to those of you in the community who have helped us stay connected with Oliver's, particularly through Facebook. Although I grew up in Columbia, our family now lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and without the Inlet View Facebook page and friends in the area, we would have truly lost track of what was going on with the lodge, despite stopping by during our annual summer visits. My maternal grandfather is Nick Sowell, the grandson of Captain Oliver and Emma Limehouse Oliver. He will turn 97 this June. Nick is unfortunately no longer able to travel with us due to declining health, but despite being in a memory care unit in Chapel Hill, he was still able to fondly recollect his times at Oliver's just last week when my mom told him about our trip. My mom and I have both grown up with tales of Oliver's and of Murrells Inlet that were passed on from my grandfather, some of his most cherished memories. In 1937, when Nick was 8 years old, he and his mother, Florence Emma Oliver, were traveling home to Charlotte after visiting the Olivers in Murrells Inlet. They were in a car with a doctor who was also traveling back to Charlotte and his driver, who were giving them a ride home. Near Hartsville, they were involved in a car accident, of which my grandfather, Nick, was the sole survivor. After losing his mother, Nick spent many summers as a child with his grandparents here at Oliver's Lodge. He loves to tell us about the inlet in those days, how you could see straight out into the ocean before Garden City was there, and when 17 Business was a dirt road. He remembers getting in a horse-drawn wagon with his grandfather, Captain Oliver, to go down the road to a local garden to get watermelons to open and share with guests on the back porch. He also remembers the kitchen with multiple wood-burning stoves and how people would sit on the back porch to pick the crabs. When my mom talked with Nick last week and asked how he remembered his grandfather, a funny memory that came to mind was how Captain Oliver liked to chew tobacco. They would sit together on the porch, and Captain Oliver would spit tobacco and try to hit grasshoppers in the yard. This was a great source of entertainment for a young boy. At some point during Nick's youth, he met Roosevelt Pickett, who was living with the Olivers. Nick and Roosevelt would go out in Roosevelt's fishing boat, and he remembers catching endless fish and crabs. Around 15 years ago, my mom and I were down for a visit. We were walking around Oliver's Lodge. The restaurant was closed, so we were very surprised to see a man with an eye patch come out of the building. My mom recognized that it must be Roosevelt. She asked him if he was, and he said yes. After that, he and my grandfather were able to reconnect, and he would come over for dinner on our annual trips down for vacation. It brought Nick so much joy to be able to talk to Roosevelt and reminisce about their childhood adventures and the Oliver family. We were very saddened to find out that Roosevelt passed during one of our family trips when he and my mom went to find Roosevelt to invite him to dinner. Roosevelt was the last piece of Oliver's that my grandfather had in his adult life. After Nick was grown with his own family, he continued to travel to Merle's from his home in Richmond, Virginia with my grandmother, my mother, and her sister to visit his cousin Maxine Oliver in the summers from time to time when she was running the restaurant. My mom's memories of Oliver's begin with lines to the restaurant being out the door, down the steps, and into the parking lot. She especially remembers the joggling board on the front porch and how special it felt to be ushered to the front of the line to eat endless hush puppies. My grandfather also loves to share that the hush puppy recipe was the best in town and that it was so good it was stolen by a former kitchen employee and taken to Lee's Inlet Kitchen. Aside from these stories, my own memories of Oliver's didn't begin until I was older and began coming to the area in high school. Growing up in Columbia, I had many friends who spent time down here. Pawleys, Litchfield, Garden City became regular destinations for beach trips. I remember the first time I visited our family plot in the Blaine United Methodist Cemetery and felt immediately connected to the Oliver family, mainly because of being able to share my name, Emma, with both my great-grandmother, Florence Emma, and her mother, my great-great-grandmother, Emma Limehouse Oliver. Since then, I've taken a great interest in family history, particularly in the Olivers, their history here in Merle's Inlet, and the Limehouse family. This house has become a place we come to visit year after year that I've been able to share with my husband and now with my daughter as well. Recently, I was searching the Inlet View Facebook page trying to find information on Oliver's as we had heard that it had been sold to the church. I came across a post saying that it was being torn down and unable to be saved. I posted on the page asking for more information and received a message from Alan Todd, who told me about his nonprofit, plans for the building, and this ceremony today. Thank you, Alan, so much for taking the time to speak with me and also for the evident care you have for this project. We wish that our other family members who could be here today. My grandfather would have loved to be here to pay tribute to his grandparents and also this house that was such an important part of his childhood. We are very grateful for this community, and we're grateful that you know how special Oliver's was and that it will be able to continue to live on as a piece of Merle's Inlet history. My mom also brought some pictures from Oliver's in 1929 and on. She would love to share if anybody would like to see them after the ceremony. Thank you all so much for sharing today with us.
What a thrill, isn't it? Not only to be here, to be on this site, but also to be in the midst of family. Family and so many of you that have fond memories. The memories of this historic site are strong and will be remembered, recorded, and retold. Blaine United Methodist Church is sad we cannot save the building, but we can save the memories. We've heard some fine stories already, and before I share some of Cleve McClary's own memories as a busboy from the summer of 1960, let me give you his apologies for not being able to be here. He and I talked several times this week, again this morning, while he was in the hospital during the week, and although he was discharged late yesterday, it was too soon for him to join us today, according to his wife, Deanna. He wanted to be here. Please keep Cleve in your prayers as he recovers from an infection. Let me begin chronologically with our history and then add Cleve McClary's distinct and humorous memories at my conclusion. As most of you know, the plantations of the Waccamaw River ran east, from west to east, from the river to the marsh, from fresh to salt water. Merle's Inlet corresponded with Laurel Hill, now part of Brook Green Gardens, with Richmond Hill and Wachesaw and Woodburn. And just as Brook Green stretched to Magnolia Beach, now better known as Huntington Beach State Park, as Litchfield stretched to the Litchfield beaches, Pawleys, Debbie-Doo, and North Island all had seashore properties for the literal evacuation from malaria during the summer months. Bad air, malaria, was of unknown origin at that time, but we know the standing water of the rice fields led to the breeding of mosquitoes, hence the summer fevers. Tidal waters, sand, and strong breezes kept the mosquitoes at bay and provided a healthy retreat for plantation owners and enslaved persons. We know that as early as the 1730s, Captain John Murrell owned the land from the river to the inlet that was named for him. Richmond Hill and Wachesaw became the names of the plantations he held on the Waccamaw, and by 1825, the land was purchased by John McGill, originally from Williamsburg County, who married Mary Eliza Vereen, a descendant of our early colonial family, Jeremiah Vereen, of course, the first South Carolinian to welcome George Washington in 1791 on his first trip ever south of Virginia. Think about that. McGill's land on maps shows the seashore plantation on which he resides in the summer. This land here, by 1860, the year we believe the heart of this structure had been built, is also the year that McGill owned nearly 200 slaves and produced 500,000 pounds of rice. There are 1860 descriptions of this summer home not far from the Methodist Church, which we know now would be the mission house of the Reverend James Lynch Blaine, the parsonage, the place where Methodists first worshiped here in the inlet, where the public boat landing is today. With the decline of rice following the Civil War, new or struggling owners produced the last crop of commercial rice in our area in 1910. And by that time, Northerners were already flocking here for the winter duck hunting, either as guests of property owners or as members of hunt clubs. By 1891, Captain Bill Oliver had bought this property and was running a riverboat up and down the Waccamaw River from Georgetown to Conway. The Waccamaw River was yesteryear's highway for inland crops, for timber, for lumber, for barrels of tar, for mail, and for passengers. Most of the boats offered food for the trip, and some of the boats had the best food. Captain Bill Oliver's boat had a fine reputation for good food. In 1910, Captain Oliver and Miss Emma decided to create a hunting and fishing lodge for the season and for the cooks on the boat. And the cooks on the boat became the cooks at this new Oliver's Lodge in 1910. Imagine no game limits for ducks or deer or turkeys. I imagine in addition to that kind of hunting, there was a little bit of snipe hunting. Raise your hand if you've not been snipe hunting yet. Let's all look around. Everyone should go at least once. We would all be willing to take you, all you first-time visitors or newcomers to the area. By establishing Oliver's Lodge in the parsonage area, again associated with Reverend Blaine, we begin to realize that there were neighborhoods or settlements in 1910 named Sunnyside, an area named the Hermitage, the Parsonage, or Cedar Hill, as some called it, and of course the Woodlawn and Vauxhall area. Oliver's Lodge, the first and only true boarding house, employed local whites and blacks in 1910, the 20s, 30s. Imagine when the Great Depression hit, most Southerners said, "What depression? Are we having a new depression?" Because we had been so poor since 1865. Imagine Oliver's Lodge as an economic boon, hiring carpenters, boatmen, oystermen, cooks, gardeners, housekeepers, and hunting guides. And together with the economic impact, let me share something I just became aware of, the religious impact of Oliver's Lodge. Now you're thinking, eating and drinking during the roaring 20s, how can that be religious? Well, for some people, eating and drinking is a religion. Well, there was a pivotal group that wanted to start a church on the 100 acres left by Reverend Blaine for this purpose. Captain Oliver, Genevieve Chandler, and Mr. and Mrs. Clark Wilcox were discussing, planning, and hoping. But it was Mrs. Oliver, Miss Emma, who conceived the idea of reusing the old abandoned Methodist chapel on Oakland Plantation, today a part of Willbrook and the Reserve. The answer from the hunting group who owned that property in the early 1920s was yes. The idea of a woman launched the project. Captain Boo Lashcott, who grew up on the Waccamaw Neck at Waverly Plantation, Waverly Mills by the 20s, was an expert carpenter and contractor and would go on to build so many of the houses on Pawleys Island. He became the He became the help that was needed to disassemble the chapel and to have the lumber, the beams, the brick pillar, foundations, and more, with his mules and oxen, brought to this site. The work was done to create Blaine Memorial Methodist Church in 1925. And as you know, we've just celebrated our 100th anniversary. And we are not just next door to Oliver's Lodge. We are intrinsically linked. The idea of Miss Emma Oliver was good for the community and, of course, good for business. A restaurant developing right next door to a church, what a good idea. The lodge became Oliver's Lodge dining room. Captain Bill's son, Captain Mac Oliver, and his wife Teeny took over, and he ran charter boat fishing trips from the dock here, and Teeny managed the dining room. So many people remember those post-World War II years distinctly. Their daughter, Maxine Oliver Hawkins, took over and ran it. Think of this, 3 generations until a sale out of the family and the last gasp for this popular restaurant until Oliver's Lodge closed by 2009. It has been sitting empty, ignored, neglected. But Blaine Church will not ignore its past. We will celebrate this site. We will collect the memories of the Oliver family, of the Cooks, including Theodore Russell, who started here and went on to be a co-owner of Drunken Jack's, of Ed Cribb, who was a busboy and then a host at Oliver's Lodge and went on to operate many restaurants on our Grand Strand. Oystermen and crabbers like Roosevelt Pickett, who lived here as a boy and kept working hard until his death in 2017. Ken McKenzie, seated here and speaking next, actually arranged for the grave marker for our beloved Roosevelt Pickett after his death in 2017 when he discovered there was no marker for this interesting and devoted man. The Georgetown Library asked me several years ago to do an oral history interview with Theodore, with Rooster, Roosevelt Pickett, and Ed Cribb, and you might watch that filmed here under the oaks on YouTube. Oh, how I long to tell you more of all the things I've been learning, of who I met and got to know when I came here in 1984 to work at Hobcob Barony, but needed to moonlight at the Anchor Inn restaurant. As we continue to explore the history and the memories of the men and women, the blacks and whites, the employees and the visitors, and of the Northerners and the Southerners, as we envision those waiting on the porch, waiting on that joggling board, and imagine the lines that stretch from the front door, waterside, to the church, and the line moved quickly because of the fast work of all the busboys, like Ken McKenzie and like Cleve McClary and others. Cleve reminded me in our conversations he loved being the fastest table cleaner that ever lived. He wore track shoes from high school, from Winyah High School, but he had the cleats removed and a soft sole replaced on the bottom. He grew up in Georgetown, his father a longtime manager of Friendfield Plantation. In the summer of 1960, he worked here to earn money for his 1952 Ford and his college career. He and Ed Cribb were asked by Gurdon Tarbox, then director of Brookgreen, to live at Adelia, to be the security against vandals and trespassers. What an honor to just have turned 18 and be asked to be the security for an oceanfront castle. But of course, trespassers and vandals were stealing things from Adelia, and their presence did make a difference. His Ford took Cleve McClary every morning to Dawson Lumber to stack boards all day, and then to Oliver's Lodge to bust tables. The money at Dawson's, Cleve earned $27 a week, 1960, and at Oliver's Lodge, $3 a week, but he also got 50 cents from each waitress. That was his cut. But he never went hungry. Hush puppies and food uneaten on patrons' plates. Admit it, we've all done it if we worked in a restaurant. Oh, sometimes it wasn't meant to be fried. It was supposed to be broiled. Sometimes just half a steak was eaten. Good times. 1,000 people a night, 1960 is what Cleve remembers, 1,000 people a night served. Mac and Teeny once told him they probably made about $37,000 a year. The restaurant was only closed on Christmas Day, and that's when they served the help that was so much like family. Accounts were set up for employees at Eason's store, and Ed Cribb picked up the employees each day and then took them home at 11 o'clock at night in the Oliver's old van from south of Brook Green to inland at Murrell's Inlet toward Collins Creek. The staff made the restaurant successful and made the 1,000 customers a night very happy. Imagine, as Cleve reminded me, there was only one restroom upstairs in this building used by the public. It served both men and women. So Cleve said, I did more than just clean tables. And one day, when Cleve reported to work, Miss Teeny said, get on in here as he entered the back door. I've got a shrimp cocktail for you. Cleve hesitated. He was an athlete. He knew alcoholics. He had decided a long time ago he wouldn't ever drink. He'd always avoided alcohol. And so it was, he thought about that shrimp cocktail, and it sounded strange anyway. Shrimp cocktail? Miss Teeny pointed to the boiled shrimp and the cocktail sauce, and Cleve was so relieved it was food. Better than liquor, he said. In the days of brown bagging and seafood platters for $1.25 in 1960, these Murrell's Inlet restaurants were world famous. Oliver's Lodge was the first, but soon Garden City Grill, the Clipper Ship, Wayside, Morse's Oyster Roast, but especially our Lee's Inlet Kitchen, those hush puppies, in the same Lee and Dorman family since 1948. On Paul Vernon's Facebook page and Inlet View that you mentioned earlier, so many photos and people's memories of this great place, mentions and memories that will not be forgotten. Books by Corinne Hawk, by Pratt Gasquet, by Sister Peterkin, Clark Wilcox, and Jim Mickey helped tell us the stories of this Murrell's Inlet area. Blaine Memorial United Methodist Church, again, could not save the building, but our church can save the memories. And with the help of everyone who ever came, we can appreciate the memories of the past. Ken McKenzie was a busboy here, a table cleaner. He might not have been as fast as Cleve McClary, but he's certainly fast on his feet and has some memories to share about his time here at Oliver's Lodge.
Good afternoon. My name's Ken McKenzie. In the late 60s, I just want to tell you a little bit of what went on here when I was a young kid. My dad built a home on Murrell's Inlet in the late 50s down here. And so we were actually from Florence, but all my summers and all my years I spent growing up down here on the inlet. And I had an uncle who actually, his home was River City Cafe down here. That was his original home that's still there, that River City Cafe is in. And my dad, my uncle, when I was in high school and I was in Florence, said, hey, I can probably get you a job at the lodge because I knew Maxine. So I ended up becoming a bus boy here during the summers and spent so many memorable years down here, just incredible years of growing up. And I remember, of course, like some of you do, when there was nothing over here at all. And it was a beautiful paradise down here, actually. So I just want to tell you a little bit of what kind of went on here in the lodge when we were bussing tables. Of course, none of this was here. This porch was here. It's been painted since then. It was all dark wood and all, which I kind of liked a little bit better. But anyway, during the nights from about May through time school started, I'd bus tables here, and there would be 3 of us bussing tables here. And during the summer, people would come from all over the country year after year. It was a family tradition to come here. And you see the same people summer after summer. And so, and many famous stars came through here that you never heard about. You know, one of them was Mickey Spillane, who I knew and actually played cards with sometime down on the inlet years ago. But he actually got married here. But the way the process would work here, it was usually 3 bus boys, and I just think this is kind of a side note. We would set up like hawks watching these tables in here because they wanted that line moving like this, boom, 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 you know, all the time. I mean, like I say, you serve 1,000 people a night. That's a lot of people. And they lined up down here, down around the building, to the front porch around here. Used to be a big jostling board out front where everybody came in, and they all gathered on the porch and waited. Of course, as soon as we'd sit there like hawks and watch those tables come open, and when they come open, we'd have our tray ready to take off, and boom, 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 clear and set a table in 30 seconds. People would laugh, and they'd photograph us, they'd time us, and we'd go running towards the kitchen. There used to be a door on the right back here going into the kitchen, and we'd kick that door open, and the guys back there, the guys washing dishes back there were looking through the window at us, looking to see us coming, and they got out of the way when we kicked that door open. And everything was done by hand. Washing glasses, plates. There was no dishwashers. There was no air conditioner. There was no vent hoods in the kitchen to take the seafood grease smell out. It was all window units in the kitchen. So, and it was also no cash register, no credit cards. It was all cash. And the lady there taking the money up had a little add machine. She'd add up. That was it. That was the way it was. It was just very simple. But probably my favorite memories of all was Roosevelt Pickett. It's people that that impact your lives and like that. So Roosevelt had a tremendous impact on my life. So a typical night here, we'd buff tables. We'd go out back and we'd box sometimes. We had a room back here in the back that was full of supplies, and we'd go back there and box. Then we'd go jog a couple of miles. We were in good shape. And then several times a week, I decided to go up to Myrtle Beach, because I wanted to look at girls. So we'd go up there and and have our party a little bit. And I would always come back here to see my buddy Roosevelt. And I'd come in here to the bottom of the stairs, and it'd be late in the morning, and I'd say, Roosevelt. And after a couple of minutes, Roosevelt would come downstairs. He'd come in here and he'd make a pot of coffee. We'd stay up all night talking about life, just life. He had so much philosophical knowledge in him. And I guess it was just from experience in life that he had, because he came up here as a kid. He was picking up clams in the creek for a few cents a piece. Mr. McOliver would pay him for those, and he ended up living here. And his room was up here on the top, right above the dining hall where he lived. His entire life in that room up there is where he lived. So anyway, it's just he had a tremendous impact on my life. During that time, the Cold War was going on, and I was scared to death of the nuclear bomb. I don't know how many of you remember that. You're old enough to remember duck and cover. Yeah. But that used to scare me to death when I was a little kid growing up. So one time I said to Roosevelt, I'm afraid to have a family. And he told me, he said, Tojo, you go ahead and have your family. And I did. So anyway, just memories like that. And I found out in 17 when I retired from SLED that Roosevelt had passed. And Wally Lee came by and told me that. And I found out he didn't have a tombstone, so I ended up buying him one. And it was just, I can't, the memories we have here of going out in that creek. My wife and I were dating. We would go out in that creek in the middle of the night. Roosevelt, sometimes I'd run out in a motorboat to the mouth. One night, my boat quit. Roosevelt rowed us all the way back, singing to us, all the way back to the lodge right here. It was a holy boat. It had plenty of holes in it, but he was just quite a character. He had a dog. Roosevelt had one eye. He had a dog that had one eye, and his dog name was Water Dog. So, and then he had another dog named Buddy. But it's just incredible to me about how one man, one person with so little material possessions, nothing to his name, impacted so many lives. I've always been astounded by that. And whenever I went to buy him I went to Thompson's Memorial over on 544 to buy him a tombstone. And I was in there buying him a tombstone, and I told him where Roosevelt was buried. He said, I know exactly what you need. I know exactly what kind of tombstone you need, because I know that cemetery. So there was a lady standing in there at the time. She says, I knew him. And I'm thinking, how in the world do you know Roosevelt Pickett? You know, how? But he knew so many people from all over the country, you know, that came here year after year, all over this area. I mean, everybody knew Roosevelt. And he certainly had a tremendous impact on my life that I'll take with me the rest of my life. And I thank the church so much for doing this, for saving this, because it's really sacred ground that's disappearing, and it needs to be saved like that. But thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is nearly overwhelming. This is an incredible demonstration of, I think, what we believe. My name is Dr. Alan Todd. I'm a professor at Coastal and a trained archaeologist and historian. And with my background, academic background, what I do is study material culture, right? But what that is studying objects and elements hewn by hand to better understand people as well. And as I started at Coastal and then eventually moved to Conway, 2019, I came to realize that our area is being impacted significantly by development. And with that development, you get a lot of buildings that are demolished and sent to the landfill. And it dawned on me as I started to work on my own house that was built in 1950. During COVID, I had to keep from going stir crazy. I started, as an archaeologist does, is excavating through my floors. And I found the original hardwood floors. And I fell in love with the building materials that are around here, but also particularly the crafts that go into constructing our built environment. And as someone who specializes, again, in studying material objects and elements that provide us with information about the people that made it, I fully empathize with the removal of this building. This is not something that we like to do, especially in the case of a clear demonstration of people, who love so much about this building and its memories. In this case, though, I discovered pretty quickly that after meeting the church administrator, that Oliver's Lodge is twisting, kind of towards the back, and it is simply, on the outside looks okay, but she's dying. And from our perspective, we like to kind of consider ourselves to be offering some kind of some hospice care to a building, but a structure that is infused with all the memories that everyone's described so far, and no doubt millions more, right? It is our mission to always honor the building's history. So it sounds like we'll work together quite well with everybody to make sure that when the building is removed, that we write the history of the building as well. We work with Coastal's Marine Science Department to scan the building so we can reproduce it in three-dimensional format, which will appear alongside the histories. And when it comes to the process of deconstructing the building, we do it with the utmost care. The first week, we're starting tomorrow, but the first week will be planning. We don't come in with heavy machinery, right? That's the opposite of what we believe should be done. Instead, the first week or so, I'll be with a few other crew members, kind of getting to really know the building in a way that to ensure that our job is done well. And then the following week, we will begin processing or begin removing some of the elements starting at the top. But again, we'll kind of start slowly. And so if you happen to come by and see us working, it kind of will start slowly, and over time, it'll start to go a little quicker. I will say at this point, simply for the sake of our time commitments that we have, that if we've been getting a lot of questions from people about perhaps acquiring some of the materials. And while our mission is to ensure that every piece of this building, as physically possible, is put back into reuse, and we will do that, again, we need some time to plan to make sure that that can be done in a way that's orderly and good for everybody. So for those interested, you can follow us along on the socials, Conway Salvage, or check out our webpage, conwaysalvage.org. I'll wrap it up with this. Thank you all. It's buildings matter. The built environment matters, and it's because we see it every day of our lives, and when it changes, it'll certainly impact us. But just know that we're going to do it with the love and care that all of us deserves. Okay. Thank you.
I think you can tell by what Alan shared and how he shared it. That's why we wanted his organization involved. It's with the emotion that he expressed that we encounter this, that we engage in this. We have great respect for this property and what it's meant to Murrells Inlet, what it means to the people gathered here today and the many people you represent. And so that they will take great care to make sure it is honored well, is reassuring and encouraging to us. So we thank you, Alan, for that and for how you'll do it. We thank you, Ken, for the firsthand account of what life was like working here. Lee, Moo, we thank you for giving us a historical perspective of what life has been like. I know you should, she said that was very, very brief. So we, when you want the 6 or 8 hour version, just find Lee. And Emma, thank you for representing Robin, both of you for representing the family and for understanding why we need to do this, but your support in that and the care that you have for it matters to us greatly. So thank you. I'm very thankful for everybody who's been part of making today possible. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today to be part of what's happening. We're grateful for Inlet Affairs and for their contribution to make sure we have some good food, which we'll tell you more about that in a bit. Conway Rental Center, Dino and Gary, who former owners, all have been helpful in this. I'm very thankful for the staff who's worked tremendously hard to make everything possible, the trustees who have worked to get us to a place where we are able to steward this property going forward. Paul Gardner has done a tremendous amount from years of work to get us to a position to be able to acquire the property, right down to in his shorts running around setting up tables today. He has been part of the entire process at a very firsthand level, and I'm so thankful for what he and all the staff have done for us. We're grateful that, as some of you know, there have been some four-legged residents who've been part of this property for some time, and that was a concern of lots of people. So thanks to Adele, thanks to All for Paws, who have made sure they've been relocated to a cat sanctuary and are being cared for well. We're grateful that that was part of how this is dealt with. So after a prayer, we will invite you on the far side of the tent nearest to where I am, that you can line up. It won't be quite the line they had at Oliver's Lodge back in the day, but it will be a line. You can go through and receive, it's a sort of a sampling or tasting of representative foods from the Oliver's Lodge era. There's some condiments there in front of the vans, and then on the back side of the larger tent, you can find your drinks. Thanks for all who are helping to make that possible. We're grateful you're here. We're grateful for what this means in the present and what it will mean for our future. by God's, consider holy ground, and we are honored to be able to steward it in God's name for God's purposes, and we look forward to seeing what God will reveal to us in the years ahead about that. So thank you. Let us pray. Lord, who has invited your disciples to find rest in you, who made a meal of fish for them by the water, whose welcome and hospitality were hallmarks of ministry. We thank you for the warmth, rest, good food, and good fellowship that have been enjoyed at Oliver's Lodge. Countless people sat on the joggling board, enjoyed corn fritters and fried flounder, had their first dates, anniversaries, and birthdays, made this place central to their annual family gatherings, felt the ease of pleasant nights out while enjoying the view of this beautiful inlet. We're grateful for what Oliver's Lodge has meant to Murrells Inlet and in the lives of so many, from the Olivers themselves, to the people who lived and worked here, to all who enjoyed the many gifts that Oliver's had to offer. Bless their memories. Bless them for the good they contributed. Bless those seeking to do good with these materials and this land. So, Lord, as stewards of such a beautiful property, we ask you to lead Blaine Memorial United Methodist Church to what you would have us do here, that will both honor Oliver's Lodge legacy of hospitality and life shared, while honoring your call to minister faithfully in new and exciting ways in the decades to come. Let these happy grounds become holy ground for whatever it is you call us to next, because all of it is a gift from you, and all we seek to do with it is a gift back to you, Lord, in whose name I pray and give you thanks. Amen. Go and enjoy the meal and the celebration. Thank you all for being part of it.
So how are you going to document what you're doing?
We will be taking loads and loads of photographs as we go. We not only document the history, so we'll be working with folks here at Blaine to gathering the history, but also I have several students who will help collaborate with the history and help document that. In terms of the structural elements, we'll be working with Burroughs Chapin Marine Science Center Wetland Studies, and they have fun instruments like drones that have LiDAR. So that will allow us to penetrate much of the walls in a way to where we can see all the interior elements. So we'll also be able to recreate the building in three-dimensional structure as well. So in addition to that, then as the project starts and moves on, we'll be posting on social media. We'll be highlighting kind of the progress probably once a week to talk about exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's a much slower process, of course, than demolition, and that's a good thing as far as we're concerned. It gives us time to touch and feel the materials, and we'll also be talking about the materials, what actually was used in terms of the wood species. We'll talk about kind of the architectural
Maybe we're getting it done, man.
kind of craft that is involved in everything they're doing.